Hi, I'm Megan Elliott, co-founder and managing director of Ginger Cloud Foundation. Thanks so much for joining us for Series 2 of our podcasts, Creating Inclusion Ambassadors. The aim of this podcast series is to provide a platform where people can share their stories of inclusion within their communities. And we'll begin to learn the skills needed for all of us to ask why not to inclusion and accessibility. Hi James, thanks so much for joining us today to share with us your stories of your community, the barriers to inclusion and participation that you see and how you're championing change. We'll be asking you questions that will help us understand who you are, why inclusion matters to you personally, the barriers that you see, and how important it is to include girls, boys and young adults with autism, Asperger's and learning and perceptual disabilities. So James, first off, tell us a little bit about who you are.
So my name is James and I grew up in Toowoomba for the first 18 years of my life. I went to Toowoomba Grammar School for high school and then I moved away down to the Gold Coast for university where I'm doing a Bachelor of Sports and Exercise Science and now I'm here.
Fantastic. So tell us about that lovely shirt that you're wearing, James. So what role do you have within Ginger Cloud?
So I'm the regional coordinator of the Darling Downs region. So I look after Toowoomba, Highfields, Dalby and Gundawindi this year. So just making sure the modified rugby program is delivered to a high standard across all those regions.
Fantastic. And you're off to our information evenings this afternoon as well.
I am off to Dalby this afternoon, so
yes.
that'll be a good afternoon, nice and warm.
Fantastic. Oh, great. Well, look, just a disclaimer here. Now, I know your mum and dad, so I'll ask you a couple of family questions because I think it goes to values. Tell us about your family dynamics, your values, and how that's impacted what you're doing now.
My family, like as a little unit, I got my mum and my dad and my little sister, Gabrielle. We're a pretty tight-knit little group. I think the values that we hold in our family really dear are things like hard work and resilience and just never really giving in to anything. Also, something that we really value is just giving everyone a go, no matter what it is.
And your dad lives those values and your mum does as well. I mean, Your dad was president of the Bears and is now still coordinator for the MRP. And tell us a bit about your mum and Gabrielle.
Yeah, so my mum, she's a school teacher and she's just recently moved out of teaching at a private school to do more Queensland education sort of stuff, which for her has been a real change as well because unfortunately she's seen some really disadvantaged kids as well now that she wasn't previously exposed to at a private school, and she's found that confronting at times and challenging, but I think what she's seen through the MRP has helped her manage those situations as well differently to how she would have otherwise.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about obviously school. So we've been had huge support from Toowoomba Grammar School from the very first time that Ginger Cloud and the modified rugby program went to Toowoomba. So tell us a little bit about what the influence of that, the values of the school have had on you as well.
Yeah, the school, so I went to Toowoomba Grammar and their big values was honesty and hard work and those sort of values, and I think they too, through a number of different charities and organisations, brought in other values that they added on. And we were very lucky, right from when the modified rugby program started in Toowoomba, the headmaster of Toowoomba Grammar was always very supportive of it, and I spoke with him on many occasions in my senior year about how good the modified rugby program is and everything that he wanted to do to help out. Doing things like halftime shows or before the first 15 at important games and stuff. He allowed us to go on as the modified rugby program and do exhibition matches and stuff, which is a really cool opportunity for lots of people. So
tell us a little bit about how the ethos of Toowoomba Grammar School has really influenced you as the young man you are today.
So yeah, they do a lot of work for a lot of different charities and organisations, and the phrase that they like to throw around is a servant leader. So leading through the actions that you do towards other people, more than how you lead yourself or lead a group of other people, but just giving back to the community is a really important thing for them. And there's countless opportunities throughout the school year from grade 8 through to grade 12 to to do that, and I think that's a really awesome thing.
Yeah. Oh, look, and as you say, the school, from the moment that that Rhett kind of raised the idea with school, have been so super supportive, which is just fantastic. The next question is really about how we got to know you and how you got to know us. So do you want to share the story of how that all happened?
Yeah, so I knew another James who knew Rhett, and through that line of friends I got brought along to an MRP training session one afternoon.
These are rugby friends?
Rugby friends, of course.
Yep.
And I got to be a player mentor for a season, and obviously met the rest of the MRP family and really enjoyed it and thought it was something good with a little bit of expansion and some good words and all that, a bit of luck. I managed to end up being the coach of the Tumba Bears in their first year, which was a big step up and a really enjoyable and rewarding thing to do.
Yeah.
Being a coach was a lot different to being a player mentor because you had a lot more responsibility, and it was fun. It had its challenges, and it was something that I really am thankful for. And then the following year I got to be a regional coach where again I just took another step up and now started to look after the Bears and USQ all together, and I think that was even more rewarding than just being a coach because I got to see so many more people experience success, which is what we're all about in the Modified Rugby program.
Yeah, and I think what we've loved about that too is we've seen you grow, and this is one of the things that it's fantastic to be able to see, young men and women go from player mentors to assistant coaches to coaches and area coaches and now regional coordinators. That I suppose the question that I always love to ask is, why do you keep coming back? What does it mean to you?
I think just the fact that I get to help someone other than myself. Like I was very fortunate through almost all of my schooling to be able to play rugby, and the values and the lessons that I learnt from playing rugby are things that I keep with me through my university degree now and through my relationships and everything like that. And I think sort of feel bad knowing that there's people out there that are missing out on learning all those life lessons from playing in a team sport and playing in a difficult team sport even in terms of rugby. So I think just the opportunity to come back and help more and more people every year has really kept me coming back. Obviously with the expansion into regional Queensland, rugby out there becomes even more part of their lives because they don't have the other things that we do in the cities. So rugby is their social life. That's all that's how they socialise. And I think even out there's still underprivileged kids with autism and all those sorts of problems that experience more isolation than they would in a big city, not having the help so easily accessible to them. So I think that's what keeps me coming back more than anything else, just being able to help another person.
And one of the things that we talk about often, and I remember you spoke with Tim Horan a lot about this as well, is about resilience. And that's a value that we see as so important for all our families, all our young people, the girls and boys who are impacted by learning and perceptual disabilities. Resilience is something that they need to learn really early on. Do you want to share your experience about resilience? Yeah,
so in the last bit of year 12, playing a trial match for school for the first 15 rugby, I dislocated and fractured my C4 and C5, obviously in my spine. That was a bit of a wake-up call really quickly. 17 years old and being taken off to hospital in a neck brace and on a spine board. Obviously when all that happens you don't have too much time to think, so I got rushed off into surgery and then woke up in ICU connected to all the machines keeping me breathing and everything like that. And so that was a pretty challenging part of my life. Two very different ends. I had my injury at that stage, the peak of my physical capabilities, and then woke up a couple of hours later, no longer at the peak of my physical capabilities. And I think it would have been really easy to give up at that moment. Pretty glad that I didn't give up. But I think that's that taught me a lot about resilience, and the things that I'd learned before in rugby had given me that base of resilience to sort of get going. And I think it was a hard thing to do, but I did it. I'm thankful for it, and it was that resilience that has shaped me into who I am today, and I wouldn't change anything. It was a challenging time, and without resilience I don't think I'd be here at all. So
when you and I were talking in the hospital, I remember one of the things that you said to me that really stuck with me was what you were thinking when you were lying on the ground with the grammar boy on your back. Many people don't go through that experience. Do you remember what you were thinking at that? Yeah, it's a very powerful story. If you're happy to share it, that would be fantastic.
When my neck was broken, I sort of, like, deep down, I knew that there was something that was really, really wrong. And I remember lying on the ground, and, even when I was going into surgery, I remember being like, it's all okay. Even if I'm in a wheelchair, I'm just going to go play in the modified rugby program, and it's all going to be okay. And that brought me a lot of comfort in quite a stressful time, knowing that it was all okay because I just go be a player in the modified rugby program. Like, thankfully, I didn't end up there, but it was a really nice comfort to know that that was something that I was going to do, if worse come to worse.
So how long were you in hospital? Do you want, if you can just help people understand what that was like and the environment around a couple of other boys at the time?
Yeah, so I was the second boy from Toowoomba to go into quick surgery that week. A boy by the name of Ollie also had a serious C4, C5 injury just 30 hours before I did. So he was also in a different hospital going through a very similar thing. He unfortunately spent a lot longer in hospital than I did. I was only in for about 6 days, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And I was lucky enough to walk myself out. There's been another boy, Alex, and a couple others around the spot, and Connor, that haven't been as fortunate as me or Ollie, and spent a lot longer in hospital and still getting around in wheelchairs and still learning to walk. So all in all, I'm pretty lucky, I think, to be where I am.
The next area, it's a kind of a good discussion, because I've always wondered how important your community was at that time. So I remember when I came and sat with you in hospital, I remember that you'd said to me literally the day before, when you heard about was it Ollie that you'd text him to go, mate, great, we'll play for you. Who could have imagined that the very next day you would have been in that situation? Like, had that thought kind of gone through your mind at that time? No,
like spinal injuries and stuff in rugby is always, it's a someone else, not me. And it's quite awakening when it happens to you, especially because, being around rugby for so many years, you'd seen people go off in ambulances with neck braces, and it was nothing ever major. In like 12 years of being around the sport, I'd never seen one. Yeah, for a good mate to go through it the day before, and then to me, it's pretty eye-opening. And I think my community, it was pretty awesome during that time. I remember having many aunties and uncles and cousins that came to visit me in ICU.
It was a little restrictive in terms of who could see you, wasn't it?
Yes, so there was some cousins that I didn't know about, and some uncles that I didn't also know about. But I think, my community was a really important part through that. And, my friends, some old coaches that had coached me for a long time, went out of their way constantly to come and visit me. China, who used to work for the MRP, came and visited me all the time and checked on how I was doing. Even then, the school, the support from the school, the first 15 organising trips to come down and visit me. And then even when I got back to school, the support through moving classrooms so I could sit comfortably in a chair and all sorts of little things like that. That was my community at that stage. And they really went out of their way to help me as best they could.
In terms of your community now more broadly, so you've moved from Toowoomba, you're at the coast. That's a big change in itself. Where do you see yourself within your community now? Like, who is your community, and where do you see yourself within it, if that makes sense?
Yeah. My community's got bigger, thankfully, rather than smaller.
Yeah.
And, I haven't left Toowoomba behind. There's still people that I know in Toowoomba. There's still, family and friends in Toowoomba. But now that I've moved to the Gold Coast as well, I've now got all my friends on the Gold Coast and little families that I run into and families of friends. So I think my community is getting bigger and bigger all the time, and meeting new people and doing work at TSS gives me another community. And I think now that my community is getting bigger, I have a lot more influence over that community, and I think my role now is just to keep doing what I have already done, keep promoting inclusion and just giving everyone a fair go, and just being the sort of bloke that no matter what, if you need something, I'll come and give you a hand. I think that's my role within the community.
Obviously, you've been involved in the MRP, you've done a lot of service things through school, now you're involved with at TSS as well. What do you see as being some of the barriers to inclusion and participation, not just necessarily with children with cognitive disabilities, but inclusion overall?
It's interesting because if we go all the way back to when we were more primitive, there wasn't a lot of inclusion. If you didn't fit in, you're out. The pack stays together. It's a really recent change that we've moved to being really inclusive. And so I think there's still a lot of people that don't quite get it and have that almost that primal instinct still that if you can't keep up, you're out. I think that's going to take some time to change, unfortunately. And I think that's a barrier that keeps people out. I think there's a lot of opportunities out there to be involved if you want to be.
Yep.
I think it's making those opportunities available to lots of other people and putting them out there and social networking them and making them really public and not having any stigma around it anymore. So, there's nothing wrong with going and seeking help, or even, going and doing something is better than not doing anything at all.
Yeah.
Even if it's the wrong thing, just go and give it a try and go and be a part of another community. And even if that doesn't work, go and be a part of another community. And eventually you'll end up in the right spot.
I think one of the things we notice is that, particularly with young people, so many people have a desire to be inclusive. They just don't know how to do inclusion. That's something that I found really interesting, because obviously having Max, so Max he'll be 17 in April. He has autism and a complex language disability, and we've been doing these modifications for so long now. People say you don't even know you're doing them anymore, and it's interesting to hear if people have a low awareness, the things that we take for granted, those things we need to share and communicate because they haven't been other people's experience. And I remember saying to someone, they were talking about, why are you so passionate about inclusion? And I said, because it's not a privilege, it's a human right. I was wondering what you think about helping people understand what to do in a very practical, because kind of from a government perspective, sometimes I think we say, we all just need to be inclusive. Let's just be inclusive. Who's going to be inclusive? Well, who knows what that means? And even if you do, what do you do about it? So in your community, what do you do about it?
Yeah, so obviously it's really easy to say we're going to be inclusive, but it's really hard to do that. I think it's a daily conscious decision that today I'm going to do something better for someone else. And I think the best way to show inclusion is actually to go and show people what it looks like. So show people through the Modified Rugby program, or just sharing it on Instagram or Facebook, and maybe a whole new group of people in my community are going to see it and be like, oh wow, maybe I could do something like that. Or maybe today I'm going to start making a change. And even on more minuscule level, it's just saying hello to someone in the street, even if you've never seen them before, but just that little tiny bit of inclusion, I guess.
How influential do you think your family has been in that skill set, in that value and those skills that you're talking about?
Yeah, they've had a really big impact on me through my life, and I still try and live their values even though I don't live with them anymore. And it's the simple things, it's the 1%ers that make a difference. So that the extra second it takes to say thank you, or the extra moment it takes to hold a door open for someone, it all is worth it in the end. And I believe in sort of the karma sort of idea that if you do good for someone else, when you need help, someone might do good for you. And I think, that's that's something that got instilled in me from a young age. Dad was obviously involved in the club very early on, from as young as I can remember. It must have been 1 or 2 years after I started playing at the Bears. He was always there, and I remember, going at 6 a.m. in Toowoomba with the sleet still on the ground, and Dad would go and set up the poles or make sure that the lines were marked on the field, and then, at 6 p.m. at night again, he'd go and pick them all up. And that's just a small 1%ers to help someone else. Didn't do anything for Dad, but it was helping someone else.
I guess the last question is really about why do you think this matters so much to you? Well, personally, why does inclusion matter to you?
It's important that everyone has a place, as we've said. Even sort of after my accident, I was almost left behind a little bit, because there was a lot of things that I couldn't do anymore. I think being able to do anything I want to not being able to do anything. And I think it's in those little moments where inclusion really matters. When I couldn't drive because of my neck, so friends would come and drive me around and little things like that. And that's like a little act of inclusion. And now I'm given the opportunity to do something even more inclusive for so many other people. And that's what makes it so important to me. I've seen what it's like to not be included at times.
Well, I think, James, on that note, thank you. I don't mean thank you just for today. I just mean thank you. Your whole family, but you, and it does mean so much to us. And by that I mean us and the broader and our smaller family, us. Every time we put a great photo on social media about all the awesome things that our kids are doing, we create a better life for Max and for all the kids in Toowoomba, and really for all of us. And you are such a huge part of that. So thank you. Thank you for all that you will do and all that you've already done for us.
Thank you.
Thanks, James.